Clara couldn't sleep. Again. It was the third night in a row. The room around her was still, too still. Only the clock ticked softly in the corner, echoing through the silence like a gentle metronome of restlessness. 2:47 a.m. Moonlight spilled through the open curtain, painting silvery shapes on her ceiling. Her eyes traced the shadows, first the outline of the bookshelf, then the corners of the room. She had always found comfort in quiet, but tonight, the quiet felt louder, heavier, like something was waiting. She turned on her side, then her back, then again to her side. Nothing. Her mind was tangled, half memories, half dreams. She thought about the book she left open on her nightstand. She thought about the letter she never sent. And most of all, she thought about the feeling. That strange, tender pull inside her chest, like the wind before a summer storm. She sat up slowly, brushing back the loose strands of hair stuck to her cheek. Her room was the same as always, dusty rose curtains, wooden floors, the soft hum of the radiator. But something was different. She felt it again, that sensation. Not fear exactly, not even unease. More like invitation, as if the night itself was whispering, calling. Her eyes moved to the quilt at the foot of her bed. It was folded neatly, like always. Except tonight, there was something glowing beneath it. She hesitated. It couldn't be real. Of course not. It was just a dream, or a trick of tired eyes. But the soft, golden light beneath the quilt shimmered, slow and steady, like breath. She leaned forward, her fingers trembling slightly as she reached out. And then, she pulled back the quilt. There, beneath the fabric, embedded into the floorboards of her bedroom, was a small wooden door. Round, warm, faintly glowing at the edges like it had been lit from within. Clara blinked. She was awake. She was certain of it. She pressed her hand against the wood. It was warm, like skin. And then, without understanding why, she turned the brass handle. The door opened down into complete darkness. Not cold, not frightening, just unknown. She climbed in, carefully, one foot, then another. And the moment her weight shifted through the frame, the world changed. She found herself standing at the edge of something vast. Endless shelves stretched in every direction. Towering bookcases that seemed to touch the stars. If stars had lived in golden candlelight, the walls were lined with spines of every color, shape, and language. Dust danced in the light like snowflakes caught in time. The floor beneath her was made of polished obsidian, reflective like water, but firm beneath her feet. There was no sound, only the quiet hum of knowing. She was in a library, but not any library she had ever seen, and it was waiting for her. "You found it," came a whisper. Clara turned sharply. No one, just shelves. But she felt it again, that presence, like the library was alive. She moved carefully between the shelves, fingertips brushing worn leather covers and gold-edged pages. Some books were ancient, some looked brand new. One glowed faintly as she passed, as if it recognized her. On a low table near the center of the room was a cup of tea, still warm. She didn't question it. She sat. And the moment she did, a book floated toward her. It hovered in front of her, gentle, glowing. There was no title on the cover. Just a symbol, a key. The book opened itself, and as she stared at the pages, she realized something. This was her handwriting, but she had never written it. "I was 6 years old when I first felt it, the pull towards stories that didn't exist yet. I remember a garden, and a gate that was locked, and a boy with eyes like storms." Clara's breath caught. She knew that boy. From a dream. From years ago. But he wasn't real. Was he? The garden was always there. I just never had the courage to open the gate. Until I did. And then the world changed. She turned the next page, then the next. Each entry, it was her. But it was also more than her, as if someone had been watching, writing, remembering the pieces of her life she had long forgotten. Or never known. She looked up. The library had shifted. Now there were windows in the ceiling, showing constellations she didn't recognize. Moons, galaxies, a different sky. Just as she stood to explore further, she heard it again. A whisper. Close this time. Gentle, loving. We keep what the world forgets. Then silence. The lights dimmed slightly. A candle flared in the distance. And slowly Clara walked forward, deeper into the shelves, towards something she didn't yet understand. But her heart whispered back, I remember. Clara sat on the edge of her bed, the folds of her blanket clenched tightly in her fists. The glow was gone. Just like that. She blinked again, rubbed her eyes. But the little door, the one she had stepped into, was no longer there. Only the floor. Plain wood. Cold beneath her toes. She slowly got up and walked around her room in silence. The curtains swayed gently, though the windows were closed. The radiator hissed faintly in the corner, warming the air. Everything looked the same. But Clara wasn't the same. Something had shifted. She could still feel the texture of the library under her fingertips, the scent of old paper, the echo of the whisper. We keep what the world forgets. She pressed a hand to her chest. She wasn't dreaming. She knew she wasn't. Because in her hand, curled tightly like it had always belonged there, was a thin, silver bookmark. It hadn't been there before. She turned it over. Engraved on the surface was a single line. To remember is to return. The next day passed in a fog. Clara moved through her apartment in slow motion, pouring coffee, feeding the cat, answering a few work emails, but her mind was still in that strange, glowing room. She checked the floor again. Nothing. Not even a mark. She even flipped the mattress, pulled up the rug, examined every inch of the boards beneath her bed. Still nothing. But that night, when the world darkened and the sky turned the color of ink, Clara sat up again waiting. Waiting for the feeling to return. Waiting for the door. And at exactly 2:47 a.m., she felt it. It began as a warmth, deep in her spine, a flutter behind her ribs. Her body stilled, attuned to something ancient and gentle. The room grew quiet, quieter than usual. Even the clock seemed to hush. And then, there it was, the glow, a faint pulse beneath the edge of her quilt. She rose slowly, breath caught. She didn't hesitate this time. Clara peeled back the quilt, and the door was there, glowing, breathing, as if it had been waiting for her. She opened it and stepped inside. The sensation was immediate. She wasn't falling, more like slipping, like water over stone, and then silence. Stillness. The library. Exactly as she'd left it, the candlelight, the obsidian floors, the infinite shelves climbing into starlit darkness. But this time something was different. The air felt warmer, more aware. The books hummed faintly, as if they'd missed her. And waiting on the same table as before was the book with the key, the one without a title. She sat, opened it, and the pages flipped themselves, past the memory of the garden, the boy with storm eyes, the gate. New pages now, written in that same handwriting, her own. The key is not to open every door, only the ones that belong to you. Each dream has its own shelf, each shelf its own keeper. But beware, some books write back. Clara looked up sharply. Books write back? She glanced around, suddenly aware of a figure at the far end of the aisle. A silhouette, moving slowly. She stood. Hello? She called gently. The figure paused, then stepped forward. He was tall, thin, dressed in deep brown robes that flowed like melted candle wax. His hair was silver, but his face was youthful. His eyes were strange, not human, not glowing, just endless. Ah, he said softly, you returned. Clara nodded. I think so. You remember more this time. She blinked. What do you mean? He tilted his head. Dreams are not things you enter, Clara. They are things you unlock. The library has always been here. You just forgot. She felt dizzy. I don't understand. You will, in time. For now you may explore. But be gentle. Not all stories wish to be found. He turned to leave, then paused. And do not follow the music. Clara wandered through the library, deeper than before. Books whispered to her in languages she didn't know, yet somehow understood. One shelf was entirely filled with dreams of trees, pages full of forests that shimmered and swayed. Another section was colder, echoing with the memories of broken hearts and lost chances. And then she heard it. Music. Soft. Distant. A lullaby, played on some unseen instrument, like it was coming from far, far below. It was haunting. Familiar. Her feet moved before her mind did. Down the marble steps. Into the spiral below. The air grew colder. The walls curved inward. The books here were chained. Literally. Heavy iron bindings. Locked spines. Dust that felt ancient. She turned a corner, and the music grew louder. A door stood before her. Unlike the others, it wasn't made of wood. It was mirror. And in it, she saw not her reflection, but a child. Her. At 6 years old, holding a book, crying. Clara staggered back. The image disappeared. The music stopped. You shouldn't be here. It was the librarian again. This time his voice was stern, sad. This part of the library is closed to you. Not yet. Clara tried to speak, but no words came. He gestured, and the corridor behind her shifted, turning gently until she was back where she had started. The table. The book. The key. 3 things you must remember, the librarian said softly. He sat beside her now, fingers steepled. 1. The library responds to your heart, not your questions. 2. The door only opens when you need it most. 3. If you take a story from the wrong shelf, it will take something from you. Clara swallowed. And what if I take the right story? The librarian smiled. Then perhaps you'll remember who you truly are. Clara sat alone again. The candle beside her flickered. The book turned to a new page. It was blank. But words appeared slowly, writing themselves as if her thoughts were spilling onto the page. I don't know why I'm here. I don't remember the gate anymore. But I remember the boy. And the music. And something about the sky turning red. She closed the book, clutched the silver bookmark in her palm. The third night came more gently than the last. Clara didn't wait for the clock to reach 2:47 a.m. She lay in bed, eyes wide open, already half listening for the feeling that now came like breath itself, warm and strange and familiar. And sure enough, it arrived. A shimmer beneath the quilt. The quiet hum of something remembering her. She didn't hesitate. She opened the door and stepped back into the dream. This time, the library was darker. Not frightening, just quieter. The candlelight still glowed along the polished floors. The shelves still reached to impossible heights, but the air felt thicker, like the library was watching her now. Waiting. Waiting for her to ask the right question. Waiting for her to remember the right name. The book was waiting too. Her book. Same golden key on the cover, same silver threads binding the pages. She opened it, and the new entry had already begun writing itself. There was a girl who used to live in the sky. Not above it, not below it, but in it, wrapped in clouds, cradled by stars. She fell to earth when she forgot her own name. And ever since, the library has been waiting to return it to her. Clara blinked at the page. Tears touched her lashes before she even knew they'd arrived. That story wasn't just a story. It was hers. She turned as a new presence entered the room. Not the librarian this time. Someone smaller. A girl, no more than 10, barefoot, in a lavender dress that shimmered like moonlight. Her eyes were closed, but she moved with certainty. In her hands, she carried a lantern made of starlight. "Are you the one who forgot?" the girl asked softly. Clara nodded. The girl smiled. "Then you should come with me." The child led Clara deep into the heart of the library. Past the tree of paper leaves, past the staircase that curled like a question mark, until they reached a shelf unlike any other. It was short, barely shoulder height, and each book was painted with a child's handprint. Soft pastels, tiny names, faded memories. "These are the stories children forget when they grow up," the girl whispered. "Most never return for them." Clara reached out and touched a book with a faded blue handprint. It vibrated in her palm. The title read, "The Last Night She Believed in Magic." Her breath caught. "This one's mine," she said. The child nodded. "Open it." The pages flared with light. Suddenly, Clara wasn't in the library anymore. She was outside, standing in a field under a purple sky. A younger version of herself, maybe 7 years old, ran barefoot through the tall grass, chasing something unseen. Laughter echoed across the scene. Next night, the library came to her before she even opened her eyes. She was dreaming before sleep claimed her. No ticking clock, no glowing door, just light and silence. And then, she was there, standing in the heart of it once more. But something had changed. There were more candles now, burning low on the ledges of the tall shelves. More books had shifted from their places. The table where her book always rested was empty. Clara looked around, confused, then noticed something new. A trail. Faint footprints in the dust, not hers. Smaller, leading away. She followed them. The trail wound around 3 corners and through a narrow hallway lined not with books, but drawers. Small ones. Endless. Each the size of a jewelry box. Some had names, some were blank. She reached for one. It was labeled, "The Last Time You Laughed Without Hesitation." Her breath caught. She opened it slowly. Inside, a photograph of her, at age 10. Mouth wide with laughter, eyes closed, a scoop of ice cream melting down her wrist. The memory rushed back like a wave. A summer evening, her mother's voice, the smell of jasmine in the air. Tears filled her eyes. She hadn't thought of that day in years. She moved to another drawer. This one read, "The Apology You Never Said." She hesitated. Did she want to know? Her hand hovered over it, then pulled away. Not yet. She kept walking. Deeper into the forgotten hall. At the end of the hallway stood a room. Its door was made of glass, but not clear. Frosted, blurred, like memories you can't quite place. She stepped through. The room inside was dim, lit by small floating lanterns that moved gently through the air like fireflies. And at its center sat a woman, older. Pale hands folded neatly in her lap. Her hair shimmered like ash. She was reading a book with no pages, just light between the covers. She looked up, smiled. "Hello, Clara." Clara stared. "How do you know my name?" "Everyone in this wing remembers you." She tilted her head. "Though, you've forgotten most of us." Clara stepped closer. "What is this place?" "These are the shelves of forgotten things," the woman said softly. "Memories left behind, choices not made, pieces of people that once were, stored safely until they are remembered, or forgotten forever." Clara glanced at the shelves around her. Thousands of tiny glass jars lined them, each glowing faintly, gently pulsing. Some pulsed brightly, some barely at all. "And these jars?" she asked. "Memories," the woman replied. "Each one belongs to someone. When forgotten, they are sent here. When remembered, they return." The woman gestured to a jar on the farthest shelf. It was glowing brightly, a warm amber light that pulsed in time with Clara's breath. But there was something odd. Her name wasn't on it. It read, "Belongs to Elias Gray." Clara touched it gently. The moment she did, Her mind lit up. Suddenly, she was standing on a cliff, wind howling. A boy stood beside her, the same boy she'd seen in her dreams. Elias. His storm-colored eyes looked at her with both fear and love. "If you go, I'll forget," he whispered. "And if I stay, I'll lose myself." Clara reached for his hand. "Then forget," she whispered, "but I'll come find you." The wind rose. He let go. He disappeared. She stumbled back from the jar, gasping. It wasn't her memory, but somehow it belonged to her. Or did it? The woman watched her kindly. "Some memories are shared," she said. "Some are echoes. Some are promises so strong they tie souls together, even when names are forgotten." Clara sat down slowly. "I knew him." "Yes," the woman said. "Why did I forget?" "Because you chose to." The silence stretched. Books shuffled themselves somewhere in the distance. "You once made a vow," the woman continued, "to leave behind what hurt you most. And so the library took it from you." Clara looked down at her hands. "I want it back." "Then you must go deeper." When Clara left the forgotten room, she found her table again. And this time a new book waited for her. Not hers. No name. No markings. Only leather the color of rain. She touched it. It opened instantly. The first page read, "This is not your story, but it holds the pieces of yours." The second page showed a sketch of her and Elia holding hands, walking beneath a tree made of stars. Then came another. A letter, written in a boy's handwriting. "Dear C, if you're reading this, you found me again. I don't know if I still remember you, but I remember the sound of your laugh. I remember the way your eyes lit up when you talked about stories. If there's even a piece of me left, it's because of you. Find the Firefly Room. That's where we said goodbye." Clara closed the book slowly. Yeah, the library was no longer just a place. It was a puzzle. And now, she was ready to solve it. She returned to the forgotten hall. Pulled open the drawer she had walked away from earlier. "The apology you never said." Inside was a torn photograph. Half of her face, half of his. She folded it gently, placed it in her pocket, and whispered, "I'm sorry I let go." Gentle sorrow and hope, Clara stood before the shelves in silence. The library was darker tonight. Not cold, not dangerous, just expectant. Every flicker of candlelight felt like an eye watching her. Every whisper of parchment turning in the distance was like a sigh held too long. She pressed her hand against the cover of the new book, the one with no title. "This is not your story, but it holds the pieces of yours." She took a slow breath in and opened it. As the pages turned, the library around her began to shift. The walls folded inward, dissolving like fog. The shelves blurred into silhouettes. Then she stood in a round room. No shelves, no books. Just soft grass beneath her feet, glowing blue-green in the dark. Fireflies floated around her like tiny stars. The air was warm, still, humming with memory. At the center of the space was a bench made of oak and moonlight. On it, two carved names. Akari. Clara stepped closer. Her knees nearly gave out as the memory rushed through her. Flashback, the goodbye. She was younger, maybe 17. Elias sat beside her, eyes storm-dark, fingers nervously twisting the hem of his sleeve. They said, "If I go, I won't remember anything," he said. Clara nodded. "They said it's the only way to stop the pain," he whispered. She nodded again, but her throat burned. "But if I stay," Elias continued, "I'll remember everything, and I don't know if I can survive it." Silence. Then Clara took his hand. "Then go," she whispered. "Forget me. Forget this. But I'll come find you." Tears blurred his vision. "Promise?" She pressed a firefly into his palm. "I promise." And just like that, he disappeared. Clara opened her eyes. Back in the firefly room, tears on her face. The bench still warm beside her. The fireflies dancing like they remembered everything. She turned to the page again. The next entry read, "When the boy left, the library wept. 1,000 books closed at once. 1,000 doors disappeared. And the girl, she stayed, but only half of her remained." Clara walked slowly through the firefly room. A trail of soft light opened ahead of her. It led to a mirror. Tall, thin, cracked down the center. In its reflection, she saw not herself, but Elias, sitting at a desk somewhere far away. He looked older, more tired, lost, and he was reading. A book, her book. He couldn't see her, but something in his expression shifted, as if he felt her presence. He touched the page and whispered something. She leaned in closer. "Clara, I'm sorry." She returned to the book. A new page had written itself. A letter. "Clara, I don't know how I ended up here. I don't know what's real anymore. But your name is carved into everything. I see it in my dreams. I hear it when I'm alone. I think I made a mistake. I think I asked the library to take too much. But I remember the fireflies. I remember the promise. And I remember the sound of your voice when you said goodbye. Please, come find me. Elias." Clara pressed the page to her chest. She could hear her own heartbeat now, louder than the library, louder than the quiet. A light flickered above her, and a new hallway opened at the edge of the firefly room. The walls here were made of glass, but not transparent. Each panel showed moments, like paintings in motion. Clara paused at one. It showed her and Elias, at the age of 5, building a small wooden house out of blocks. Another, her 13th birthday. A cake, a laugh, his arms around her shoulders. Another, him, walking away from a hospital room wiping his eyes. She stopped. That one, she didn't remember. Not at all. Then came a panel she couldn't tear her eyes from. It showed her sitting on the library floor, crying, a silver key in her hand. The words "erase him" glowing softly above her head. Her knees buckled. The librarian was suddenly beside her, quiet as a shadow. "You asked us to take him," he said gently. "Not out of hate, but out of heartbreak." Clara could barely breathe. Why would I do that?" "Because love, when it shatters, sometimes the pieces are too sharp to hold." She shook her head. No, I would never erase him." "But you did." The librarian looked at her, sorrow in his eyes. "And yet here you are, remembering again." She returned to the center of the library. The table waited for her. And the book with no title had one final page. She turned it and found a key, drawn in ink. But when she touched it, it became real. Cold, solid, silver. The same key from her dreams. The same key from the bench. Underneath the drawing, a final line. "One more door, Clara. The one you locked yourself. Go now, before the library forgets too." Clara closed the book, stood slowly, held the key tightly in her hand, and as the fireflies danced around her, she walked toward the staircase she had never dared descend before. Long fade out, deep breath, sound of footsteps on stone. Clara stood at the top of the final staircase. The silver key in her hand pulsed with warmth, as if it remembered the lock it once belonged to. The library around her was changing again. The books had gone silent, the candles dimmed to embers, even the air stilled. The only thing moving was her. She stepped down, one stair at a time, into a part of the library that had never welcomed her before, where names weren't whispered, where stories didn't breathe, where memory turned to shadow. The staircase led to a long, narrow corridor. On either side, tall doors stood like ancient guardians, each one made of different material. One solid obsidian, one woven vines, Another, white marble with cracks like veins, but only one door glowed faintly, a soft shimmer pulsing from its edges like breath. Carved into the surface were 4 words. Forgetting was her choice. Clara's hand trembled. She raised the silver key, and the door opened. Silently, slowly. Inside was not what she expected. The room was small, circular, lit by nothing but a soft dome of moonlight overhead. At the center, a single wooden chair. On it, a child's stuffed rabbit, old and worn. In front of the chair, a mirror. Tall, cracked, familiar. She stepped closer, and her reflection changed. It wasn't her, not exactly. The girl in the mirror looked like her, but younger, frightened, barefoot. Tears streamed down her face. She was holding the stuffed rabbit. Her lips moved, forming words Clara couldn't hear. Then another reflection joined hers. A woman, pale skin, eyes of smoke, hands made of flickering candlelight. The woman leaned in and whispered something into the child's ear. And the child, Clara, nodded once. Then the mirror shattered. The air thickened. Pages fluttered somewhere behind the walls. The silver key grew hot in Clara's hand. The librarian appeared behind her. Quiet. Present. She made a choice, he said. Clara turned slowly. What choice? To forget the pain in exchange for peace. She asked us to remove a memory. But what she didn't know was that the memory wasn't hers alone. Clara looked around the room. There were no books here, only pieces. A ribbon, a torn page, a silver ring, each pulsing faintly, each humming a single note. She was too young to hold it, the librarian said gently. So we held it for her. Clara stepped forward. I want it back. Seen, the memory returned. A wind swept through the room. The walls trembled. The mirror reassembled. Not whole, but enough. And inside it, a new scene began. Not a reflection, but a memory. One Clara didn't recognize. A hospital room. A boy in bed. Elias pale, hooked to machines. She sat beside him, holding his hand. They were 12. He was crying. They said it's in my blood, he whispered. It's going to take pieces of me, maybe all of me. She tightened her grip. Then I'll give you mine, she said. Take whatever you need. He smiled, weak. Will you forget me if I don't wake up? She shook her head. I'll forget the world before I forget you. And then the machines flatlined. Clara screamed, and the world shattered. Back in the room, Clara fell to her knees. She couldn't breathe. The truth felt like a weight on her chest. She had watched him die. She had begged the library to take the memory away. But Elias had come back, not whole, not remembering her, but alive, because she had given him her memory, and with it, her promise. The librarian sat beside her. Not all gifts are visible, he said. Some are buried, some bloom later. You gave him life. He gave you purpose, even in forgetting. She looked at her hands. At the silver key now glowing bright blue. I want him to remember. He already does, the librarian whispered. He just doesn't know why. In her lap now, a book appeared. No cover, just a soft glow. Inside, blank pages, waiting. Clara touched the first one, and the ink began to rise. This is the part she almost didn't write. The truth that hurt too much to hold. The name she whispered in her sleep. The boy she brought back from the edge. This is where the dream becomes memory. Where the library opens its final door. She closed the book, stood, and faced the librarian. I'm ready. He nodded. Final scene, the book of return. A door appeared. Different from the others. Not glowing, not grand, just open. Clara stepped through, and the world turned white. Silence, or then a voice. Clara! She opened her eyes. She was standing in a small bookstore, back in the waking world. Across from her, Elias, older, whole, holding a book in his hands. Her book. He looked confused, moved, tears in his eyes. I don't know why, but I feel like I've missed you. Clara smiled, one hand over her heart. I promised I'd find you. ASCII picked. The library was burning. Not with flames of destruction, but with light. Amber and gold spilled through the cracks in the stone. Bookshelves glowed with unread stories. Windows shone like molten glass. And at the center of it all stood Clara. She wasn't sure when she had returned. Only that sleep had taken her gently that night. No thunder, no cold, just a warmth at the edge of dreams. And when her eyes opened, she was here again. But the library had changed. It was awake, fully, finally. The silence was no longer hollow. It hummed, a chorus of every story, every memory, every name ever whispered in this place. It was alive. And it was waiting. She walked the corridors with slow reverence. Each candle bowed as she passed, flickering in recognition. The walls shimmered. She was not just Clara the dreamer now. She was Clara the rememberer. She had seen what she chose to forget. She had touched the pages of her pain. And in doing so, she had awakened something ancient. At the heart of the library was a chamber she had never entered. The round room. Its door had always been sealed. Until tonight. Tonight it stood open. And beyond it, Elias. He was there. Not the boy from her memories, not the confused man from the bookstore, but a version between. Eyes full of wonder. Hands that remembered how to hold hers. Clara, he said, you came back. She nodded. Did you remember? He touched his chest. There's a space inside me. It always felt empty. But now, I see you there. They stepped into the round room together. Inside, a single pedestal, a final book resting upon it, bound in silver and flame, the title unreadable. The librarian appeared, but this time not as a shadow, not as a ghost. He looked real, solid, kind. He spoke softly. This is the last story, Clara, the one that shapes the ending, yours or the library's. What do you mean? Elias asked. The librarian turned to him. Long ago, this place was not built. It was born from sorrow, from memories people could no longer hold. Every time someone left a memory behind, it came here, to be kept safe. But it cannot keep taking. It needs to return. Clara looked at the book. Return how? By being remembered. The librarian placed his hand on the book. One of you must take the library into your heart. Carry its stories, its sorrows, its truths, so they are never lost again. Elias stepped back. No, she's carried enough. It should be me. Clara looked at him. You don't remember everything. If you take this, it might overwhelm you. He met her gaze. I remember enough. I remember you. The librarian held out the book. The flames danced along its edges, not burning, but glowing. If you take it, he said, you will never return to this place again. But you will see it everywhere, in dreams, in silences, in forgotten corners of the world. If you leave it, the library will fade, slowly, quietly, until nothing remains. Clara reached for the book. Elias stopped her gently. I think it's supposed to be both of us. And together they placed their hands on the cover. The book opened, and the fire leapt, not to destroy, but to illuminate. The library did not scream, it sang. A song of old stories finally finding a voice. A song of memory, of sorrow, of healing. Clara closed her eyes. She saw every child who had ever dreamed here, every broken heart that left a story behind, every whispered name. And then a sudden silence, followed by the softest voice. Thank you. When Clara opened her eyes, she was in her bed. Sunlight spilled across her face. The morning was warm, still. She looked beside her. Elias asleep in the chair, a book open in his lap. The title read, The Library Between Dreams. She smiled, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel lost. She felt whole. A page turns, the sound of birdsong far in the distance. The story begins once more. Clara stood at the window watching the morning unfold like a page from a favorite book. Outside, the garden swayed with breath. The sky was soft and pale. The scent of rain from the night before still lingered, mixing with the warm scent of tea steeping behind her. She had been awake for hours, but she hadn't spoken a word yet. Not because there was nothing to say, but because everything was quiet in the best way. Her dreams had changed, no longer scattered visions or aching memories. Now they came gently. Now they brought peace. Behind her, Elias stirred. The chair creaked as he sat up and rubbed his eyes, the book still clutched loosely in his hand. The book. That book, the one they had brought back from the library. At least, that's what they believed. Neither had spoken about it yet, not in exact words. They didn't have to. Something inside both of them had changed. "You're up early," Elias mumbled, voice thick with sleep. "I never really went back to sleep," Clara said. "Were you dreaming?" She nodded. A soft one this time, like the library was saying goodbye. Or maybe, thank you. Elias got up, stretching slowly, and joined her at the window. They stood side by side, not needing to touch to feel the nearness. Outside, the trees whispered. Somewhere, a bird laughed. "It feels different," he said after a pause. "What does?" "Everything. The world. Like there's something underneath it now. A rhythm I never noticed before." Clara smiled faintly. "I think it's always been there. We just forgot how to hear it." They sat down across from each other, the book resting between them. Its cover was still warm. And inside, though they had not read more than a few pages, were stories. So many stories. Some they recognized. Most they did not. But all of them felt real. There were stories of girls who chased moonlight into dreams. Stories of mothers who left lullabies behind. Stories of lonely booksellers, abandoned houses, invisible children, forgotten songs. Every story someone had left in the library was here. And more were still appearing. "Do you think it'll keep writing itself?" Elias asked. Clara nodded. "It's not just a book, it's a seed, and seeds don't stop growing." She reached forward and gently turned a page. And so the memory returned to the one who had always carried it, though she hadn't known. Clara blinked. The handwriting was hers. A soft silence fell. Elias exhaled long and low. "So what now?" Clara looked at him and said the words like a promise. "We tell the stories, one by one, until no one feels forgotten again." That afternoon, they walked down to the little community library near the edge of town. The same one Clara had visited as a girl. The same one Elias used to volunteer at before his memory became more dream than fact. It was quiet. The librarian was a sweet old woman who wore scarves with stars on them. She looked up and smiled as they entered. "Looking for something special?" she asked. Clara held up the book. "Actually, we were hoping to leave something." They found a corner by the window, a soft chair, a little table, and they placed the book there with a handwritten note. "For dreamers, for rememberers, for you. If this book speaks to you, listen. If it opens, read. And if it disappears, don't be afraid. It always comes back to those who need it." They didn't stay to watch what happened next. They didn't have to. That night, Clara dreamed again. But this time, it was not the endless hallways or the glowing trapdoors or the librarian's soft gaze. This time, it was a garden. At the center of it, a small stone table, and on that table, a teacup. Across from her sat the girl she once was, the girl who couldn't sleep, who cried when no one heard, who wondered if she'd ever feel whole again. They didn't speak, but they smiled, and it was enough. When Clara woke the next morning, the world was bright. Birdsong filled the trees, wind wrapped around the curtains. Elias was already in the kitchen humming. And the book? It was gone. In its place, a single feather. Soft, silver, glowing faintly at the edge. She picked it up and held it to her heart. And then she breathed. Fully, freely, finally. So if you ever find yourself lost in a dream, if a door glows beneath your quilt, if a book opens when no one's around, don't be afraid. You found it, the library between dreams, and it has waited.